Hello, hello.
Hi, everybody. This is Mike from Broadjam coming at you, and I am with our newest pro reviewer, and that is Todd Herfindal. Todd, how you doing today?
Hey, how are you, Mike? Pleasure to be
Fantastic.
here.
Fantastic. And okay, so here's how this particular webinar works. If you're watching it live with us and you'd like to ask a question, just come on down to the bottom and go to that area where you can ask a question. We see it pop up. We'll click on that question and answer it for you. But that's the best way to do it so that people watching it later can go through and get the questions answered like a table of contents. All right, well, might as well start out talking, Todd, about your experience, about what got you into music. So why don't we start with where you're from originally and how you got to be a band guy?
Originally from San Francisco, born and raised in San Francisco, and I came from a band background. You know, it was the raging 90s. It was all about Guns N' Roses making way for Nirvana. Yeah. and everything changed for me with that band in many ways. But the 90s just really was the era of, you know, 4, 5, 6 guys or gals up on stage doing their thing, and obviously where we've come to in 2019 couldn't be farther from that. So I love songs. I always have loved songs. It's been the most important thing for me as far as the creativity in music. So I always gravitated towards songs. And so I was always the guy bringing songs into a band and playing them. And so I came from a band background. I had no familial reference or inspiration in my family to start music. There was nobody in my family that wanted to do music. I think it was just as a result of really having music inside me and things to say and wanting to express myself, and found bands to be a great way to do that. So that's where I have come from, and I've landed in basically the publishing world. I moved in 2003. I moved to Los Angeles.
Real quick, Todd, before we get to where you are now, okay, so if you were in a band in the 90s, 90s had great band names, like when they would shove 2 words together and stuff like that. So what were the names of your bands in the 90s? Like, is there anything, any good names there?
Well, this is my favorite name, Blue Sky Roadster.
Blue Sky Roadster. All right. I can, I can see that on a bill in like big bubbly lettering.
Well, funny. I mean, and the band eventually morphed to a different band name, because we were doing that, almost sign situation for many years. But we opened great shows. I mean, we opened for everybody from Jimmy Eat World to Roger Waters. So, I mean, and the Posies and all those great bands from that era, and Fountains of Wayne, all those great bands from that time. But I found San Francisco, as wonderful a city as it is, at the time, it was hard because it was like a tree falling in the forest. You could play the biggest, most badass show ever, and the industry didn't care. And so I had it in the back of my brain all along. I got to move to LA. There's only one film and TV business, and most of it's in LA. And I'm a songwriter, I really should be there. So I moved in 2003 and left bands behind to a degree. I mean, I record them all the time. I record them in the studio. I got a beautiful 1971 Slingerland drum kit and an army of guitars. So I still keep the faith and light that fire for rock music, even though, rock music is ostensibly has become a niche genre as far as, when you look at the top 100 tracks anywhere, iTunes, Spotify, it's definitely generally not in the rock worlds. And so there's massive audiences for rock, but it's become one of the genres that's kind of fallen into the niche category.
No, that's absolutely right. And I mean, rock almost becomes like something where, like when I was a kid, it's not like nobody would go out and like rush to buy the latest jazz album. You would be like, holy crap, there's a new, I don't know, Pat Metheny group record. Let's get in line, or hang out overnight to buy it. But a lot of people go see jazz live. it's very popular, still, popular live thing. And
I've recorded jazz. It is an awesome genre. I mean, it relies so much on the stellar musicianship of the ensemble, and it's a lot less complicated in many ways than how you record rock and pop. It's just you get four guys in a studio and you have them go at it and get the best takes. But I'm telling you, man, I hold the torch for rock, and I always have. That's my background. Every instrument on every recording that I've done, it has its basis in rock music. But rock, you can't forget, originally started out as the original pop. So again, I come at it from the song. Rock instruments, rock instrumentation, ensemble sound. That's what I use for the tools of my musical expression. But it's all the same thing in essence. When you boil it down, it's pop songwriting, or not pop. Sometimes it's artistic. Sometimes it's experimental. Sometimes it's not verse chorus. Sometimes it's a lot of verse, as Dylan might have done.
Right.
So
when you got your speaking of the songwriting part, I mean, after you've had a lot of your success, is in the way of songwriting for others, and looking at your bio, when you come in, and so like you said, you were a rock guy playing in bands, 90s alternative movement. It was a lot of fun. We were all, I mean, I was there, not in San Francisco, but I was also
the best. It was the best era. It was the last gasp of the old record business. It was the last gasp of what the music business used to be before pop just took over. And then of course it's the urban genres and everything that flows from that. And so it's just become a new world, and again, we've fallen into the niches. But I didn't want to interrupt your train of thought.
No, I'm just with you. I'm saying, because the thing is, you're part of that old place of like you said, like the live shows, guitar, drums, a very analog world, and now it's a very digital world. And so when you're transferring your skills, going through an indie rock and power pop and all that kind of stuff,
I love it.
Moving into the world of pop, like you had a big break when you got your song on Alesha Dixon's album, and she's a UK artist. Like, I heard of her because sometimes I used to watch Strictly Come Dancing because I used to pirate Doctor Who, and like sometimes the feeds would come in or whatever, and so I'd be like, oh, okay, so I'd be like, I heard of her and stuff like that. But how did you end up getting a rock songwriter from San Francisco? How did you end up getting on a platinum album from an artist from the UK?
It's a great story, and I'm glad you asked the question. So in 2003, and it all starts from me moving to LA. So in 2003, I moved to Los Angeles, and because I was being courted at the time by an A&R representative at Island Def Jam, who never signed me, but knew some people at a publishing company called Peer Music, and she was on the phone with one of them right around 2003 through 2004. And said, you got to sign this guy. And so next thing I know, I got Ralph Peer at my shows in San Francisco. So I'm encouraged by Peer Music to move to LA in 2003. So I did, in good faith. In 2004, I signed a deal. They put me in the studio as kind of like they knew that I was a fledgling engineer in 2003, although I had produced a major label album at that point. So they wanted to put me with one of their premier new writers, Tricky Stewart. And so they stuck me in the studio with him for like 2 months. And so, but not not under the guise of being a co-writer necessarily, but being his engineer. So I went in, and this is a great story of saying yes when you should have said no. They were asking me, do you know how to use, his gear, and here's his list of gear and everything. And I had no idea how to use it. Okay, I got to be perfectly honest. But what do you think I said?
Well, you said, hell yes, I know how to use it.
Yeah. In fact, I know how to do that. I do. I know how to do that. So it's a great story of saying it yes when you should have said no, and just saying, F it, I'm going to just jump in the pool here and take a swim. So that's what happened. So I ended up being signed, working for months with these guys, Tricky, The Dream, Kook Harrell, Paulina Rubio, all these great, now legendary urban guys. But
Right.
the thing was, like, I love anything that's good with a chorus. So to me, even though I came from rock background and they dug what I was doing, it didn't take it wasn't a stretch for me to hear a song that they were working on and go, that's got a great chorus, or this one's not as good as the other, or whatever. Have my own determination in my head. All the while I'm turning the knobs and pressing the buttons for these guys.
Well, I think that for a lot of us, just the idea of that job of going into the studio every day and like, okay, let's try to figure out a song today is a very alien kind of thing. Can you kind of walk us through then what a typical day would be as a writer, like as somebody with a publishing deal, who actually gets, a check at the end of the day, or at the end of the month, hopefully, coming in. Yeah, right. Some months, but coming into the studio every day, what is that process like? What does a day look like for somebody who has a publishing deal?
It's different for everybody. And, every writer is different, but these guys back in that time, when I say these guys, I mean, Tricky Stewart and that whole crew of people at the Red Zone Entertainment, the creators, it was get into the studio and write. I came from the world of sit in my bedroom alone with an acoustic guitar and write my song, and then go to a studio to record it. Maybe rehearse with a band a bunch of times. Obviously, that's ideal, and then go into a studio. So it's a different mentality, because in many ways you're building with pop R&B and the genre that is. You're building the track from the moment you write it. It's in the studio. You're doing everything in the studio, and you're actually building as you go along. So it's maybe somebody's got the outline of the melody, but no words yet. So you might write the beat, for example, to that melody, and then evolve the lyrics in the studio. But that really is a luxury, to be able to go into a world-class studio and write. And that's one of the advantages of having been signed to a deal like that, is that they gave me carte blanche in their room for like at least 6 or 7 years. So I got to learn by doing. And there's an art to miking a drum kit. There's an art to every aspect of the creation process. There's an art to it, and learning from some of the best, watching like a hawk over what people did, not only engineers in the past before I met this crew of guys, when I signed my publishing deal, but even when I was hiring engineers before I was a producer, I would watch them like hawks, because I was interested in the guy twiddling the knobs, because I knew one day that's what I wanted to do for me or others. And so I learned how to do it by watching guys and asking questions. And then sometimes you have to just, grab the bull by the horns and say yes when you should have said no, kind of thing. And fake it till you make it.
Okay, so that's awesome. And that just shows, like, when we're talking about the process of making music, the process of working in a studio, the process of working for a major label, a lot of the times you're going to be the person who's writing inside the studio, who's, instead of coming in with a fully formed song, they're not just sitting there with like you said, the acoustic guitar or piano and putting like the iPhone up and clicking record on the voice memos. You're starting with, pro equipment and things like that. And that's an amazing opportunity. So then you're working with that team. You get that song on Alesha Dixon's record. Was that with that group?
Yeah, I actually did that with Kook Harrell and a couple of other writers, but that was part of the Red Zone team, and she was here in Hollywood cutting, and I was invited to come, and I had a co-write on that record, and that was cool. Her record went platinum in the UK back in 2009, so that was a nice thing for me. But the thing is about that is that as creators, we all want to do different things, and I really I loved having that happen, and it's great. And I'll say that film and TV runs alongside that. And so film and TV is a different beast, but it's the kind of beast that the more you feed into it, the more it gives you back. And so a lot of times that just comes down to right song for the right moment, the right individual to make it happen. I did something recently with a co-writer composer friend of mine that I never thought I would do, but I did, and it paid off big. I wrote maybe 6 Christmas songs with this guy, if you can believe it. And
All right.
they landed left and right on every Christmas movie, Lifetime, Up Networks, Hallmark Channel, and those are the gifts that keep on giving every year. Downloads every fourth quarter, downloads every fourth quarter, royalties from the performances. So it's one of those things that I never thought I'd do, but again, I was like, you know what? I'm going to do something that I've never done before. I'm going to try it. Why not? What do I have to lose?
You know, if you're coming from a band background, you're moving into a mainly songwriter background. You get involved with pop and R&B or the radio pop side of things.
Yep.
Did you make a conscious decision to start like pitching the films and TV shows, or was that part of your publishing, or like how did you start making that transition to working more on licensing your music to visual entertainment than concentrating on radio and albums?
You know, it's funny because, you know, I knew that there was a big there's a pot of gold there at the end of the rainbow with film and TV, and it was just for me, because my proximity to LA from San Francisco is very close, and I had done the thing and gotten, you know, played big shows in San Francisco and kind of found myself standing there going, what's next? And so what was naturally next for me was, let's move to LA and just see what this knows. And so I moved to LA, and I had a few friends in the entertainment business who turned me on to folks. But yes, it was, to answer your question, it was very much a part of the publishing deal, because what do publishers want to do with you? They want to make money from you. So it's anything and everything under the sun that you can do to make money for your music, a publisher will seek to do. And that is how, I mean, you know, they sent out CDs to a record of my old band, The Meadows, and which I still love to this day. Maybe we'll reunite one of these days. And they sent it out, and we got a film and TV placement from a compilation CD that went out. And like, that's the most amazing thing to me, by like not having to lift a finger and end up in an end title credit in a movie. But it's definitely something a publisher wants out of a writer, is to get songs in film and TV, because it's income streams that can last for a decade or more. And more is usually the norm. So that's kind of what happened. And then through the course of being a songwriter around town, I met other composers, and I worked with other guys. And so that's kind of how, in many ways, because some of these composers, they more specialize in music. And when they need a song that's original, that's definitely my world. Original songs, not necessarily just music. The only instrumental music that I typically do is when I mute the vocals in a song, and there's my instrumental track. So I'm not actively out there trying to get instrumental placements. I'm out there, like, I'm about to put out a record of me in probably a month or so. I just finished an album. I'm actually working on it as we speak here. And so I don't know. I've circled back around and sort of forgot what you asked me, but here I am with the love of film and TV, only because I immersed myself in it. You know, with people, and some people around me tangentially that sort of helped guide me a little bit towards the right direction. It's partially, you know, who you know sometimes, but actually, I don't know if you know this, but I actually got a Broadjam film and TV placement from literally like 14 years ago. Through the film and TV component of Broadjam, several, and it was right in the middle of my publishing deal. Had nothing to do with my publishing deal, but it sometimes they're random, you know. And my thing is songs cannot be heard until they're released. So you have to put out your music. You have to put your art out and get it out there.
Well, okay. So real quick, I think there might have been some echo on there. At least there was on my end. It might not be, if you're watching this later through the recording, that might not be in there. But in case you missed that, we were just going over a little bit of the transition that Todd did when he moved, you know, into like licensing more music to film and TV. And I think that a really good takeaway from that is you got to release, you got to put stuff out there for people to hear it. You know, you can't be afraid that somebody's gonna, you know, if you're worried that somebody's gonna steal your song or whatever. No, nobody steals song. I got to tell you, copyright is one of these weird. You should copyright your songs. I'm not saying that, but the law says
that the moment that it's released in any tangible form for sale, that is copyright. So as soon as you put out a record, you're protected by the law. You go extra steps to file it with the Copyright Congress and do all that stuff, but which is what publishers should be doing for you. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, frankly. But copyright is, you know, my lawyer says the same thing. It's from the moment it's put out into any kind of distribution that you have a claim to copyright. So you shouldn't worry about people stealing your music. You should be more concerned about the craft, making sure you can write the best song possible. Don't write throwaway lyrics. Don't settle for throwaway lyrics. Rewrite, rewrite, rewrite. I mean, I have a song that I've just recorded of me, and I rewrote the chorus after I had the drums and bass and everything else. I rewrote that chorus lyric like 3 times.
Sure, to get something perfect.
Till you get it right, till it feels right. And the thing about that is that the moment you start settling for things and what you're trying to do, it's trying to be creative. And the moment you're settling, saying, oh, well, that lyric, it may not exactly say it or whatever, but I'm just going to be okay with that. That's the moment where you start adding up the little checks in the con column for the song, you know,
right,
and so every line in a song, and for film and TV, it's kind of a different beast than it is for an artist composition, because an artist composition is often coming from personal feelings, whereas what in a film and TV context, what the song is really designed to do, or should be designed to do, is to roughly mirror the emotions that are happening in the scene. And so what are the things that, if the music is doing that, what are some of the things that lyrically that could torpedo that from working? Well, you have this beautiful scene in an office building, and you're talking about fishing with Uncle Ralph, you know, so it's like you know, lyrically it's not going to match up. So that's why it's, generally speaking, good advice to try to tap into universal truths in music for film and TV. Universal truths, universal emotions.
Now, I think that's a brilliant point right there you just laid out there, is that, you know, the job of a song when you're performing it for other people or you're listening to it on the radio is delivering a personal message to connect you as artist and the songwriter and the creator or the performer with the person listening. The job of the song inside a TV show or a film, a movie or something like that, is to amplify the emotion that they have. But so it's between the characters and the audience, not you and the audience.
And I'll say this, that's spot on, Mike, but I'll say this, I'll add to that, which is that if you get too specific in the lyric and you get too much into storytelling, names, places, times, dialogue, scenarios, really detailed storylines, that can really mess up what the song and the melody and the music is trying to loosely, emotionally support that scene. The lyric is the number one thing when all things are equal, meaning great melody, great band, great artist, great sound. But the lyric gets too specific, and usually it's the lyric that torpedoes the placement. Usually it's the lyric.
And so, you know, when you're working on something that, I mean, obviously, you know, you've had songs in very, you know, popular programs.
Yep.
You know, so, you know, when you're writing those songs and you're trying to like get those at those universal themes or say a universal message, can you give an example of a lyric you were working on where you thought like it may have been something a little more personal, and then you changed it so that it would have a more universal theme rather than the
I can't think of one immediately because that's just the way that I write. I mean, I'll scrap a lyric, meaning I'll write a lyric and just so that it fills the melody. It's like McCartney style, where he's got this melody in his head and he's just writing a lyric to fill in that melodic framework. What I'll do is I'll write a lyric that just does that, and sometimes I'll even take it off the iPhone voice memos that I do when I come up with the melody idea. See, I believe big in the subconscious is trying to tell you something when you're writing. And it's like you're an antenna, right? And you're just trying to get the frequency to come in right to the antenna. And so listening to some of those words that come out and using it to kind of inform where you might take the lyrics when a better head is thinking about the lyrics and not the melody is the way that I do it. And I can't give you an example, but I can tell you, I try not to get bogged down in detail in lyrics. I try to come from a place of phrasing emotionally, so that emotions are what's evoked from the listener, not necessarily you're telling and dictating to the listener exactly how to interpret the song. You hear that a lot in country. No shade thrown at country, but you hear a lot of really detailed storylines. And in country, the story is everything. It's absolutely everything. And it's completely understandable why the country tradition relies on the storytelling like that. But in film and TV, that is the very kind of storytelling that can be problematic for certain lyric-driven contexts. When I say lyric-driven, I mean there are some contexts in which the lyrics can add to that scene if they're done well, or they could result in the song being yanked in 2 seconds. So it just depends. But if you get too specific, then the imagery in the song is not matching up to the imagery on screen, and any director or any supervisor will see it and go next, because what they're doing is they're choosing your song out of a pool of who knows, maybe the producer's brother is an artist or has a band. And so I've had songs that were in feature film movies pulled because somebody contributed to the soundtrack that was through a team on the production side. So it happens. You can't cry about it. It's just it's kind of political sometimes. But I find that if you just make the best music that you can, write the best song that you can, really good things come from it. And I've been spoiled because through my publishing deal, I've gotten to, buy the best mics that money can buy, build a studio of my own that's part of my house, actually, which is all, it's actually solar powered, this whole studio, which is why it's called Sun Studio.
Oh, that's pretty sweet.
It's pretty cool. Yeah, it's interesting to tell clients when they come in, all of your music is coming from the sun today.
That's great. I think you make a great point there in a couple of ways when you're talking about emotion driven versus lyric driven. Because you think of how many times they've used Ave Maria in movies, and 99% of the people have no idea what even the words are to that. So it doesn't matter what the words are to that song.
Does not. It really does. And the context of the usage really matters too. I've had songs that had perhaps lyrics that were a little bit too detailed for the moment, but they were the context of the usage. It was like background in a barroom scene, and nobody's really listening to the words because it's just background music. So again, there's so many different nuances to this placement thing. You can have the most subtle placement from background music where the vocals are stripped out to featured placement, or what's called a visual vocal, where the visual is in some way interacting with the vocal mix of the song. And visual vocal.
Would that be like someone performing the song on stage, like David Lynch kind of thing, or?
No, it's not like that. It's more that it's a royalty attribution. It's a different grade of royalty. So a visual vocal, often seen by a VV, when you're looking at the cue sheet, it's just a high profile. It's the highest paid film and TV royalty that you can get. And ASCAP pays a bonus for that because, and certain countries don't observe it. I think France does. I don't particularly know why. But visual vocals will get you, like a visual vocal on Lifetime will be as much as a regular placement on, or almost as much on like ABC. Maybe not prime time, maybe just, drive time or whatever. But yeah, so there's BI, background instrumental, there's BV, background vocal, there's VV, visual vocal, there's VI, there's visual instrumental. So in some way, the song has enough volume, prominence in the scene that it's worthy of that attribution to that royalty rate.
Sure.
So,
like someone's listening to the song and paying attention to it. It's not just, it's diegetic music or something like that.
No, it's not background. It's interacting in some way.
Okay.
Whether the lyric is kind of informing the background plot, et cetera, et cetera. That's what I believe it's supposed to be for, visual vocal.
Well, that's exciting. I knew there was different levels, and I know that after a certain time frame too, the money goes up. Depending how long that they use the song.
Yeah, it's
Um,
minute increments. So, or maybe ASCAP's 30-second. I honestly forget. When I sign up on contracts, they license it for like a minute, and then they might use 30 seconds. But you give them the ability to use it for a longer time, and it's their choice to use it for that length or not. So,
so when when you're working on your music now, and like you said, you just worked on an album, and
yeah.
how you don't specifically do instrumentals, but you will take the vocal out so that there's an instrumental version there.
Always,
If
always.
So do you do a different mix then? Do you do like maybe a version with the guitar playing the melody or a keyboard playing the melody?
Sometimes, and that's, I tell people that it is sometimes when there's no melodic content, meaning there's no instrument covering the melody, then your chances of landing that as a purely an instrumental track are probably a little bit less. But in the context of the song, the full song with vocals being in something, usually the first thing they'll ask for is an instrumental. So I automatically run instrumental versions. I will just mute the vocals and run the instrumental because it's the first thing that's asked for when your song is being considered. Your song with vocals, lyrics, etc., is being considered, because oftentimes the music editor, the director, they're going to cut between like an instrumental verse because there's dialogue, and then they're going to explode the chorus that's sung because it's a montage scene that has all the emotion. And so, they're going to cut in between the instrumental and the vocal version. So I would say that if you're a songwriter, it's always good to, meaning songs with vocals and melodies, it's good to run your instrumental tracks. And I would say if you're an instrumental composer, it's good to have melody content because it adds to the interest of the song. There's a caveat there. You can be too busy with the melody or the musical elements in the mix that all of a sudden that instrumental is not going to work under dialogue. So you have to think about under dialogue context as much as you have to think about anything else, because there's all sorts of ways to place music in media. And so sometimes it's under people talking and sometimes it's not. And so I would say, don't get busier than a vocal melody would get. And if it's speed melody that you make, then I would say back the melody off a little bit or else you're going to be too busy for under dialogue context.
Now, in your experience, have you ever had somebody go back and tell you to re-record something, or have you had, or like you give them the mix and they're like, okay, no, we need a mix without bongos or something you put in there?
Definitely. In fact, I had a song once in a movie called Little Manhattan. It's a song called Younger Yesterday. And the directors had an issue with one or two lines in the song. And so they came back to us and said, what about these lines? And we were like, okay. So we wrote three, me and my co-writer, we wrote three different lyric options and for the moments that they were speaking of. And we let them make the decision, and we would have hung our hat on any one of the lyrics. So it wasn't like we would have been mortally embarrassed that they picked the worst one. We wrote them. So we allowed them to pick, and thank goodness they picked the best one. So we've done that kind of stuff. We've made edits. I've made edits on the call, on the fly. So I've done stuff like that in the past. Lately, it seems that the music editor or who the creatives involved will just edit them to the moment of the song that they want to use, and as long as I run my instrumental to go alongside my full mix, I'm in business. Occasionally, I'll run a TV mix, a vocal only mix, for weird fade outs and stuff like that. So there's plenty of options when you have the tools at your disposal to do it. You can do it. And from my perspective, in 2019, there shouldn't be any reason for songwriters to not be intimately involved, at least in the pre-production side of what they do. And that means knowing how to record yourself, at least in the most basic way. I mean, the iPhone has really opened it up, because I could come up with a melody and a song idea and a lyric and pick up one of my guitars and just put that idea down. And I've already, in essence, done some kind of pre-production recording, and then that'll be the, you know, the basis from which I grow the song and make it come to life.
Sure. You know, one thing I'm interested in is, like you just, as you just said, like, well, in 2019, of course, it does seem to be that you're going to need some kind of the technical needs of the average artist have increased.
Absolutely. Well, the tools are now available.
Right.
The tools are widely available.
And, you know, so how would you say, you know, in the past 10 years, maybe, that you think that TV and film licensing or writing for that has changed now, even on a technical level, as to how it was maybe when you were first getting placements and stuff like that? Are you finding a difference in wanting to work with more exclusive publishers or getting stuff into non-exclusive libraries, or how have you seen things change in the past 10 years?
Definitely the resurgence of the music libraries, that is really taken over. There's so many out there. Some of them have exclusivity, some don't. The best ones don't, in my opinion. If it's going to be exclusive, have it be a short term. As far as the production and things like that, I mean, I recorded my very first indie album in 1996, okay? And then Pro Tools was just in its infancy. That record was 16-bit 44.1. Now there's bit rates all the way up to 190. Was it 196? Anyway, I've got the converter up there, 190 something. I don't record that high because it takes up so much hard drive space. But so the recording, the digital recording has always been there as far as, you know, when, for me, going back to the mid 90s, that's the very beginning of Pro Tools. So I've always been used to that. What has changed with the digital world is just how much better the fidelity and the sonic options are in the box. You know, sure. I do some cool things with tape echo, and I don't have a tape echo in my studio. I have it in the box. It's mirrored. It's not mirrored. It's a
plug-in, or
no, it's a plug-in, but it's an actual model of the real piece of gear. So I have my system clocked through Universal Audio and the Universal Audio platform, and so you know, I can make a cool sounding Radiohead echo using the vocal as a trigger. And in the old days, you know, pre-95, actually probably pre-2010, used to have to go and buy one of these things and mess with it. And now there's a virtual version in the box in Pro Tools, and it tempo syncs to your session and it key syncs to your session, something the original would have never done. And it sounds identical. I mean, so close. And so there's so many more toys inside the box now than there used to be. But still, we long for what records, you know, used to give us, which is that sweet analog gear, which is why I have sweet pre's and compressors, because you need that warmth before it hits the cold world of digital. You don't need as much as I have, but you need at least one good mic and one good pre.
Right. For the are you finding that you know, demos and stuff like that, I have to be more complex than they used to?
No, I don't think so. In fact, I've told people many times that, and this is just my take, but if you don't have a knack for making a great drum track and a great believable bass take, and all that it's going to do is sound demo-like, when maybe more emotion would be conveyed by a really simple, stripped down, acoustic and or piano backed production, piano, acoustic, voice, that's enough for me to hear what's going on in a song. But if you have like a really weird, you know, drum machine sound that sounds like an HR-16 from 1992, and then you have the really thin, weird, maybe out of time bass or whatever, it's not going to help the song sound better. It's just going to make it sound more like a demo. So your best bet is, in the absence of really knowing how to do that stuff, your best bet is to just be simple and approach it simply. And that way, some guy listening like me is not going to go, oh God, that drum machine. Oh God, that bass track. Now we got to talk about that, and we're not talking about the song. It comes down to the songwriting, and it comes down to not believing that you have to throw the kitchen sink at a recording just to make it sound competitive. What it comes down to, it puts pressure on the song. Make the best song you can make, and don't worry if you don't have an inherent skill set with making drums and making bass and programming and all that stuff. Don't get bogged down in it. Be simple to convey the song, because that's, in my view, it's all about the song. And there are some songs that benefit from enhanced production, and there are some songs that but you have to know what you're doing. And then there's some songs that just sound amazing without all that stuff. So you got to take it on a case-by-case basis.
Sure,
I think is the answer.
Well, okay, so let's say you have a good recording of a song, or you're confident by it, you've done some rewrites, you got something you think is great. Like you said, you're just releasing an album now. So, like in your situation where you got a new album coming out and get into it, what's the next step you take after you do the release? You know, in the world of Spotify versus, you know, getting 1,000 CDs to sit in your garage or whatever. Like, you know, what are you doing with a new recording? So, you know, so people can kind of know what a pro would do.
Well, I have distribution through the Orchard, and I got that through Orchard is distributed through Sony and Red and all that stuff. So I got that through. I used to belong to Iota. Iota was purchased or bought by Sony and the Orchard, and so I have a indie label standard distribution, so I can get stuff out there everywhere, worldwide, just like any viable outlet can get you. I think there's a little bit more credibility with the Orchard just because it's Sony backed. But yes, Spotify has taken a lot more prominence now, and other stores worldwide. But iTunes is still important, especially when you have things in film and TV. When you have songs in film and TV, you get a lot more iTunes downloads than you would think, because the listener who's watching the show, they don't know where to go to get it. They're just going to go to iTunes and download the track or stream it or whatever they do. Spotify is interesting because it's taken more prominence. Now what you have to do is, when you release the recording, you have to build in a lead time of at least, I would say, 4 to 6 weeks, because the Spotify editors, they won't consider anything for playlist inclusion if it's already been released. Yet they want 7 days. So and oftentimes, you know, with the summer rush, I just released a record for an artist named E.L. Davis. He's awesome. I just did a 3-song EP for him, and we're dealing with this right now where Spotify, you know, the Orchard took a little longer to get the music approved for release. It popped up on iTunes right away. But Spotify still hasn't seen it, and it was distributed. Let's see, it was distributed 7 days ago. So he's already, the release date is tomorrow. So he's already, sorry, my watch is talking to me. So he's already missed his window for consideration for Spotify placement, playlist placement. So that's kind of hard one to swallow. So it taught me a lesson, which is you have to leave a little bit more time if you really want to approach the Spotify editors to get your song considered for playlist inclusion. You need to build out a little bit of time. So just because you hit publish and you want to get your record out soon, there's a liability in that you're not giving Spotify enough time. This is kind of a grand experiment for me too, because Spotify, the last time I put out a record was in 2013, so my own. So Spotify had not reached its level of prominence that it has now. So I'm learning as I go too. So at this point, my record's going to be ready next week, but I'm not going to release it until July, because I got to build out enough time for them to consider the release. And they need at least a week, and they won't consider anything that's already released. So you have to build out a little bit of time. I know of organizations that some new hungry artist is looking for playlist inclusion, and I get warning emails from this all the time from the Orchard. Like, if we find out that anything untoward happened, or you were involved in, you know, a pay-to-play scenario with Spotify, we'll pull your catalog. You know, I would never do such a thing. Obviously, I'd like to rest on my own merits and my own music. So, but what it has done is it's put the spotlight on needing to build out more time. So from the time your moment is done until the time you're releasing, you got to build out enough time to at least take the shot with Spotify, because you'll kick yourself in the pants if you didn't, right? Right. If you didn't give yourself the opportunity to get your stuff released, or to get it included in high profile playlist on Spotify, it could, it could do something for you. So you might as well take the shot. And why are you in a rush anyway? You got to do a little marketing. You got to get the word out before the album comes out. So it doesn't hurt to take your time. It doesn't. In the indie world, records don't have expiration dates like like the hummus you bought at Trader Joe's. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
They go on. I have had people that have discovered my music 10 years after the song has been out, been like, I love this song. So it doesn't. There's no rush, and you'll be sorry if you don't take your time.
Well, I think one of the things that is great you just said. Number one, iTunes is still important because people use Shazam to find a song on TV. They're watching
TV. But if you have a song playing in like a retail environment and an overhead, and somebody's like, I like that song. What is it? Shazam. Not only can they Shazam it right there, they can buy that song on their phone right off of iTunes, right where they're standing, if they have a good LTE connection.
Yeah, and Apple has bought Shazam. So that's the thing. So of course, the first link that's going to come from Shazam is going to be iTunes. So that's a great tip that I didn't think before, because there's a lot of options, and sometimes you're like, well, if I'm gonna put it on Spotify, it's free anyway. Do I want to waste time with iTunes or things like that? No, you still do, even if it's.
Why exclude yourself? I mean, because the listener, the consumer, has their favorite places that they like to buy music. So if that's the case, all you're doing when you're saying, I'm going to do Spotify, but I'm not going to do iTunes, or I'm going to do iTunes, but I'm not going to do Spotify, all you're doing is limiting the exposure for your music. When I release records, I release to every outlet in every country that the Orchard will allow me, that we have the legal ability to do it. Why not? Why wouldn't you do it? You should be ubiquitous. Your music should be everywhere and available. And if it's good, it rises to the top. If it's not good, or it needs work, et cetera, it is what it is. And so there's no reason to play the exclusion game. It doesn't benefit, in my view, it doesn't benefit indie artists.
So, right. So the other thing I was thinking of is, when you're releasing an album, like, how would you let music supervisors and stuff like that, who maybe you've worked with in the past, or people at networks or publishing companies you may have worked with in the past, know about your new record? Like,
well, many times, I mean, they're part of my massive email list that I've made over, probably 20 years in the business. And over the course of, several indie artist releases, from band ones to, solo artist stuff, which is my latest stuff. So I've just been diligent about keeping track of those people. And a lot of them some of them are here in LA. Some of them are far and wide, worldwide. So email is your greatest connection to those people. And then as far as my contacts here, it's just, I'll just send an email to a buddy of mine who's a composer, be like, dude, I got to get you my new record. That's kind of how I would approach it. There's also new avenues to get your music. The Orchard services Pandora. So it's immediately up on Pandora within, a few days. So Pandora's covered. That's not terrestrial radio. Now I've done radio campaigns in the past. I've become a Billboard-charting artist as a result of those campaigns. The degree to which they're helpful, it's kind of on the fence for me, because the record labels still have the terrestrial radio bought and sold, and terrestrial radio has never been more marginalized than it is today. And tomorrow it'll be even more, and the next day even more. So at the end of the day, you just kind of have to weigh your options and see, where are you going to get the most bang for your buck? You want to spend 15 grand on a radio campaign, and you're only going to have a certain amount of bragging rights, because you're going to be played in what are called tertiary markets, because the major record labels have the major markets locked up, and you don't have the kind of money to be able to compete. And yes, payola is gone, but they give gift cards.
Right. Or, like concert tickets and things like that.
Whatever, gifts.
So, and Broadjam, you're going to be taking pro reviews. And so you're going to help people, with their music, and try to give great critiques and work with them. So Now, when do you think is the best time to get your song reviewed? So you're thinking you're working on a song, you know, maybe is it before you've taken it to the final recording process? Is it before you've mixed it? You know, when do you think is the best time to get a review of the song for the most bang for your buck when it comes to getting the feedback you need to make it the best it can be?
If it's truly a question of song, meaning in your heart, you're wondering, is this a good song or is this not a good song? Or I know that there's things I need to work on. I just can't put my finger on it. It would be before you undertake the potentially expensive process of professionally recording it. I say potentially because every artist is in their own recording situation. So I can't sit here and say there's one way or another. But in your heart, if you're truly wondering and you have doubts, or you play it for people and you're not quite sure what the response is, it would be better to have the information sooner. Again, I would prefer if it's an ensemble sound or it's a like a pop record. If the production values are going to accentuate the song and not make me go, yeah, that sounds like a really dated drum machine sound and a dated, you know, or a dated rhythm section sound, or the keyboards are not contemporary or current sounding, I'd much rather have a stripped down recording, because then you're just listening to the pure elements of the song. And I'm a lyric guy. I love lyrics, and so, you know, there's ways to draw the listener in. There's lyrics that bring you in. There's lyrics that punch, that do the outward thing, and it's great when you have a mix of both. And I even like to mix visual vocals sometimes, or that get into like a shade of telling a story, but then open it up to a universal sentiment in the chorus, for example. And the best place to be universal and speak and tap into universal emotions is in your chorus, because chances are that is going to be the section of the song that gets synced. So again, you don't want to be talking about fishing with Uncle Albert. Did I just quote the Beatles? Anyway, when the scene is in an office building or in a bar or something. So tapping into universal truths in the chorus, not a bad strategy, because that's probably the section of song that they're going to use. Probably. Always exceptions to the rule, right?
Right. No, and you know, that's the kind of thing where you know, we're wondering about you know, sync and stuff like that, is knowing the difference between a lyric that has an appeal to a lot of people and a lyric that might specifically only apply to, you know, one or two situations. And so I think that, like, that's one of the valuable takeaways here is, number one, if you're writing for film and TV, think universal for sync, because they're not going to be able to talk about your family members. Or if you're coming out and saying, if you like say like a woman's name in the middle of a breakup song, like it's a completely different name than the girl in the show, they're gonna be like, well,
I've seen this a
we're not
lot.
gonna put that.
I've seen this a lot. It's one of the pitfalls in songwriting where it means so much to you, right, as the writer, and it was this person's name and it is the truth. That's great. That's all great. But at the end of the day, the listener doesn't, I mean, the listener could be a music supervisor. The listener could be a director, a producer, whatever. The listener doesn't care what the person's name is, even though
Right.
there are classics that have names. Cecilia. I mean, great song. Okay, great song. But in 2019, you're trying to make a living from your music. If you get bogged down in names and the names aren't jiving with what's in the show or the context, the sync context, you've just torpedoed your placement. That's one of the many pitfalls, lyrical pitfalls, ways to mess up a tune if you're pitching to film and TV. It's detailed stories, it's dialogue, it's names, it's places. And that's why you got to, I think, this is what I do, is to phrase from an emotional perspective. I felt this when this happened, or I feel this when that happened. You know, it's not a blanket statement. Again, it's the mix of both that work great. If you're going to take the risk and put like a storytelling type lyric somewhere in a song, better it be the verse, not the chorus.
Right.
You know, and I can speak that very confidently because most of the time it's the chorus is what they're after, you know?
Can you take an example from maybe a placement that you've had that you saw that they used a particular line of yours because of its universality or because it amplified the emotion of a certain scene, where you were like, "Holy crap! I didn't even think of that." Like they really pulled something out of my song that I didn't even expect by adding this visual to it.
Yeah, and it's the song that was in that movie Little Manhattan, and it was the bridge in the song. And I'll have to paraphrase because I wrote the song 15 years ago, but the song talks about it. The summer's almost over, and we have to live right now. Basically, that's the expression in the bridge, and it had them riding their bikes, and it was summertime in New York City, and it was just the perfect moment. And I never really wrote that lyric with that in mind, but it just was a perfect marriage. The summer's almost gone, I think, was the lyric, and that was the truth for them in the movie, and I think it really connected. And so that's a great happy accident. Sometimes they happen, but again, you just have to write for the song and what the song is kind of dictating that it wants to be. And I think that that's all you have to worry about. I mean, just be the best writer that you can be, and try to make the lyrics potent, emotionally potent, and tapping into universal truths, and you can't go wrong. I mean, this is the craft that I've honed over 20 years, and lots of, even out of commercial placements, so lots of success to back that up. But it's a labor of love, and you do it because you love to do it, and it's something I've worked on for a long time. And you have to get through. I'll put it in quotes. You have to get through your bad songs to get to your good songs.
That's a good.
And I view in a weird way, my publishing deal as that sort of fertile ground where I got through some bad songs in order to get to good songs. And so songwriting teaches you how to do songs better the next time. And so there's a net benefit to not creatively stamping on your music before you complete it. Let the creativity complete. Don't just think, oh, this sucks, I'm not going to finish it. You know what? Finish it, because it will teach you something for down the road.
Well, and that's also what we're hoping to do with Broadjam Pro Reviews, is to help people make songs the best they can. Because the better music people have on Broadjam, the more successes they have. The more successes they have, the more we're doing our job, which is helping independent artists connect with publishers and supervisors and people that can help them do something with their music. So a lot of times people say, I have an album done, what's the next thing I do? And get it to people so they can hear it and see what happens. And that's what we're trying to do. So before it gets out there, or if you're looking for the best place, if you're wondering about, like, well, what does my music sound like? What kind of genre is it? Where's, who are the other artists that sound like? And maybe it's a great time to send your music to guys like Todd. He can come in and he can help you kind of answer a couple of your questions and help you with, carving. If let's say the carving is rough when you get it, and then it's the fine tuning to make something more detailed and the best it can be. So, Debbie just asked in the chat, where's a great place we can hear some of Todd's songs? Todd, where can people find your music? So they want to take a listen and go, well, that genre is a lot like mine. I'm definitely going to send to him. Where's a good place to do that?
Absolutely. My website, toddherfindalmusic.com.
toddherfindalmusic.com. I'm going to type that in the notes right now.
It has my record from both my albums, one from 2008, one from 2013. It will have my new one called 2-Track Mind very shortly. My last record was kind of leaning on the Americana pop rock tip. This is going to be a little bit more bluesy and classic rocky and a little darker, a little bit more rock oriented. So I have different lanes that I like to write in. And right now I'm writing in a darker, bluesier lane. And that's kind of what the next album is going to be. So I write songs for the song. And then when you finish the song, you're like, how would it be the best production for it? What should we do to make the song come to life, kind of thing.
Awesome.
So I think like I'll wear the songwriter hat, done with the songwriter hat, put on the producer hat, and say, how are we going to present this song in the way that where it can be its best. And I love the fact that everybody who's a songwriter is on their own unique arc as far as the timing, their own unique creative arc. I'm at the tail end of, let's see, I'm at the other end of 20 years having done this in the music business, before the music business, in the music business now. There's some people that are out there that wrote songs for a few years, stopped to have a family, and then picked it up again, and they need assistance with determining, is this lyric helping or hurting my song? Is the opening line helping or hurting my song? Is the vocal helping or hurting my song? What about production elements? So sometimes when the songwriter is trying to express themselves in lyrics, sometimes the lyrics flow and work perfectly, and sometimes the lyrics actually do the opposite job that you're trying to do. So in these contexts, the getting a little bit of feedback from somebody who's been through the mill and knows what a lyric that can tap into a universal truth is, can be helpful to the creative process. So I'm comfortable reviewing a single acoustic guitar or piano vocal demo, and I'm comfortable in hearing a full-flown production that's right at the end, and they're considering, oh, we don't know if this last line of the chorus is working or not. Right. I'll give you my honest truth. You know what I mean? I'll tell you my honest gut feeling, you know, and oftentimes I frame it from the position of, hey, if we were sitting down in this room together and finishing the song, here's what I would here's the bullet points that I would focus on first. And, you know, I approach everything that from the position of, hey, if you were a co-writer and we were sitting here working on it together, here's the advice that I would give you, or here's a suggested route that maybe we should take.
Sure.
You know?
Well, Todd, this is great. Thank you for spending an hour with us. And the Broadjam members, number one, we absolutely appreciate that. Number two, if you guys out there are interested in getting a pro review from Todd, if you're watching this on Broadjam right now, you can just click over on Pro Reviewers, and you can find Todd's name on there. Or if you are watching this on YouTube, I want you to go down there in the description of the video. We're going to have a link directly to Todd's page on Broadjam where you can submit your song and you can check it out. And then you can get some direct feedback. You ask them a question, get a quote for your press kit. It's a pretty detailed review process with the ways we go to try to get at every single aspect of the song that we possibly can. So, Todd, once again, thank you for your time. The people that joined us live, thank you very much. And if you're watching...
Can I say one more thing? I really think you guys have a great service here, and I would also encourage any members that want to review from me is to reach out in the question format and just what do you want to ask me a question? What do you want to get out of this? Answer my question. What do you want to get out of this review? What is it you're trying to do with the song? What are your intentions are? That way I can, when I'm responding and listening to the song and giving my advice and reviewing it, etc., I understand what your goals are. That really helps.
That's perfect. And there's an area in there too where you can put that right in there, list of things that you want to get out of the review, and then Todd can answer that question for you.
Right, exactly.
So please do that. Check it out. Use these resources to become a better artist and to realize your full potential as a songwriter, because that's what we absolutely want to help you guys do. So if you haven't joined Broadjam, now here watching this on a random thing on YouTube or later, broadjam.com, and the pro reviewer area is where you'll find them. So I want to thank you guys for joining us and hope you have an awesome music career.
All right, Broadjam, thank you so much. Really enjoyed it. Mike, pleasure.